Hello and welcome to the last video in the MB Sportsweb video training series covering the online forms feature. In this video we're going to show some of the other options that are available for the online forms, such as setting hard limits and soft limits, adding hidden field questions, using file attachment questions and how those are available for both offline and online viewing, and also how to create online payments and attach that to your form. So back in the MB Sportsweb demo site, we're looking at the Manage Site Content module for the organization site. We're in the Advanced Features area underneath Online Forms, Manage Forms, and we're looking at this form called the Advanced Features form. So in here we've got a couple of questions that we've not seen before. One of them is a hidden field and the other one is a file attachments question type. Now the other thing that you can do from the same page where you're managing the questions and sections is click the Edit Form button, and that will bring up the general properties for the form itself. So if we want to attach limits, we talked briefly about limits in an earlier video, but just to review, we can have a number in this limit box to automatically shut down a form after a certain number of submissions have been received. Now there's instructions at the bottom of this page that explain what to do, but if we have a negative number, we're using what's called a soft limit, and a positive number will be what we call a hard limit. The soft limit means that if we have a number of -5 in here, after the 5th submission has been received, the form will remain open. A warning message will appear to the person who's submitting the form saying that there's already been 5 submissions. At this point you can still submit the form, but your submission may not be accepted. If the limit was 5, then after the 5th submission has been received, the form will still show up. However, the button to submit the form will not be enabled and no more submissions can be entered into the site. So we'll use -5 as our soft limit. The other thing that we can point out on this screen for the online form is that this one is set up as an online payment. So the payment provider, we have two options available as far as payments, and the none option, which means it won't be allowing online payments. Now the difference between the PayPal optional and the PayPal required: PayPal optional will mean that when somebody submits the form, they're going to be taken to a page that has a button on it, and that button will say click here to pay. On the optional one, it says thank you for your submission. If you would now like to also pay, you can please click here to click the button below to go ahead and fulfill that transaction. The required one has much more strong language. It says that thank you for your submission. In order to complete your submission, you must now click the button below to complete your payment. So that's the one difference. The other difference is that for the PayPal required type, the website on a daily basis, sometime between 12 midnight and 4 a.m., will look at any form with PayPal required. It will then look for any submissions that have been put into the site where the PayPal transaction ID is blank. So when somebody clicks the button to go pay but doesn't finish the transaction, or if somebody just doesn't click the button at all, the website will have no information or nothing stored for that PayPal transaction ID. It'll be blank. So we will send an email to that person reminding them, as long as you've collected their contact information, we will send an email reminding them that they need to go pay to complete their submission. We will also send a summary email to the administrator of this form, to whoever set up as the notification email address, showing a summary email of everybody who received a payment reminder email. So you know exactly who's being emailed those reminders, and you can follow up with them if you'd like. Hopefully the reminders are enough for them to go ahead and pay. Now, if you'd like to have the PayPal required option set, because you want the majority, if not all, of your transactions to occur online, but you still do allow for certain circumstances where people can come in and pay in a different way, or if there's financial assistance, then you can go in and edit those submissions and just type something into the PayPal transaction ID. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a check number. If you're tracking check payment, you can just write in that they paid cash. As long as there's something in that PayPal transaction ID, it will not send an email to that person reminding them to go pay. So we'll leave that as PayPal required. The only thing then is that when you create your PayPal account, you're going to give them an email address that's associated with that PayPal account, and that's the one that you're going to enter into this box for the PayPal business email. And you can also now select the currency that you want to use, either Canadian or US funds, with Canadian being the default. So we'll go ahead and update that. And on the preview screen, it tells us now that there's the soft limit has been set and how many submissions have come in, and at this time only 4 more submissions will be accepted. So all that shows up on here. Now this form also has a approved question, which is set up as a hidden field. So if I edit that, we can see that the question type is hidden field, which is near the bottom of the list. And once we've chosen that hidden field option, it says there's no additional settings available. So really the only thing you're going to use is some sort of a label to say what you're tracking here, and this is for administrative purposes only. So this question will not show up to the person submitting the form. They will not be able to see any information that's been entered into it. The only thing that's going to show up internally when you're looking at this form is the question text, and once you've received a submission, you'll be able to edit that submission and type something into that hidden field to track whatever you want to track. So in this case, we've put it in as approved, but you might want to put in payment status or something else that you're tracking internally along with all your submission data, so you can keep all that information in one spot. The other question that's on here is a file attachment. So if we edit that, we'll look at the file. The question type is again near the bottom. It's a file attachments question type. With this, there are some configuration options, so you can choose how many files that somebody can attach. If we don't set anything here, the default is 1. But if you want to allow somebody to attach multiple files, you can set to allow up to 10. And the allowed extensions, which is the type of files that somebody would be allowed to upload and attach to their submission. Now, if you don't check any of these off, then they will by default be allowed to upload any of those types of files. So images or Word files or PDFs or Excel files or PowerPoint files. So if you're looking for specific types of files, then you can check off just the ones that you want. So we've checked off here to receive just images and PDFs. And the last thing, because this is a PayPal enabled form, you must then declare at least one question that will ask somebody the amount that they're going to be paying. Now you can have as many as you want. This particular form has just one. But if I look at this PayPal question, it's the PayPal items with amounts question type, which is the very last one in the list. And this will only show up if the form itself is set up to be a PayPal optional or PayPal required payment provider. So the same thing, you can ask the question, so we can just say pick an amount, but let's say this is a golf tournament registration form. Maybe this is how many players are you registering for, and then each of those response options you can say 1, 2, 3, or 4, and their corresponding values next to that option. If you can also have more than one payment question, so if the first question was how many people are in your foursome and those different options, then you can then ask in the next question how many carts would you like, so 1 or 2, and have different amounts. So based on what people have chosen, it will give you a total, and that total will be passed over to PayPal, and that's what they use to complete their transaction. Now incidentally, the options that we're looking at on the response options tab, this is very similar to other question types that have the multiple choice, where it's either the drop down list or the radio buttons or the checkboxes. The difference is that the PayPal ones have another column called the dollar amount. So this one here, we've got the text of option 1, the value of 1, and a dollar amount of $5. Option 2 has a dollar amount of $10. So if we need to change this, and this actually applies for any of the response options question types, the easiest way to do that is to click delete, and that will then fill the top part up with what was previously set up for that particular option. Then we can go ahead and make a change to it. So we can say $15 instead and click add/update option. What this will do is it'll look at the value that's in this value box and try to find an option that has the same value. And if it finds a match, it's going to update what was already in that list with the new information. So if we change the text of it, we can call this option 11. Because it's got a value 1 and this one has a value 1, if we click update, it's going to change the text on it. Now we could just do that manually, so we can say option 1 and the value of 1. If we know what those values are, we can set that and set this back to $5 and click add update option. It will do the same thing. So again, that's regardless of it being a PayPal, it can also be a drop down list or a checkbox list. Managing your options and updating your options using that feature of clicking delete and then using the add update option is a little quicker than just retyping everything. In addition, you have this option to disable, and again, that's also available on the other multiple choice type questions, where you can say perhaps there's a early bird rate and a regular rate. You can put in both rates at the start of the form, and then once the form first opens, assuming the early bird rate is the one that's available, you would disable the regular rate. And then once the early bird period has expired, then you would enable the regular rate and disable the early bird rate. Now that doesn't happen automatically. You would need to come in here and do that manually when the time comes. So once we've got our payment options set, we can go ahead and update that, and we've got our form ready to go. So we'll go ahead and fill one in. So we'll just type in our email address. And again, this is set up as an auto reply email address, so I will get a copy sent back to this dummy address. And the amount, so I'm going to choose my option 1 for the $5 amount. And for the attach something, if I click select, because we've chosen to only allow images and PDFs, if I try to upload this PowerPoint file, it will have a little red indicator to indicate that that's not a allowed file. So if I remove that, try select again, we'll hit the expense report image, and then this has a little green icon to say that this actually is a file that's allowed. It also tells the user what type of file extensions are allowed before they even click that button in the first place, the number of files that they're allowed to upload, and the maximum file size that they're allowed to upload. So we'll go ahead and enter in our human validation code and submit the form. And because this is a PayPal form, it has a button on it here now, and it says this form requires payment using PayPal or any other major credit card. The amount due is $5. Click here to pay online. So if you click here to pay online, that will then take us over to a PayPal checkout page. And they don't have to use PayPal, they don't have to have a PayPal account. All they can, if they want to just use their credit card to process the transaction, they can certainly do that. And PayPal accepts Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or Amex. So they can use any of those payment types. The form will send over to PayPal. It'll have the name of the form itself. It will have the price and the quantity. It will always be 1, but it will have that name of the form as the line item that is in their basket when they're checking out. Now, if somebody does have a PayPal account, they can certainly use that. They can log in with their PayPal account and choose to pay that way. If somebody wants to attach a debit card to their own PayPal account and wanted to use that to process the transaction, then that's how they would do that. So now we'll just go back to the website and we'll have a look at the responses for this form. So if I click on the View Responses options, it will take me to that Reports, Online Form Responses, and to that form. And in here we've got a couple of responses already. So the one I just did and one that we did previously, which we did actually process the transaction. Now what I'll show in here, that for this one that we have the PayPal transaction ID, that the amount is actually negative and the PayPal status is refunded. So you can actually in PayPal, if somebody does need a refund, you would process that refund in PayPal. PayPal will then send a message back to the website and it will track who's been refunded along with their submission data. So if they had paid previously and be refunded, this would have the payment status and the amount updated. Now this one here, we didn't complete the transaction, so the PayPal transaction ID is blank. And again, because this is a PayPal required form, that means that sometime between midnight and 4 a.m. each day, this person will receive a reminder email that they need to go ahead and pay. And that reminder email will have a link back to the submissions page so they can just click the button and go ahead and pay. Now, if I was going to allow them to pay offline, so maybe they came in and gave me cash, I can then edit their submission and just type in to the PayPal transaction ID, paid cash, August 8. And then that will eliminate the reminder email to going to this person because there is something entered into that PayPal transaction ID. The hidden field that we put in for the form, now that we're editing the form, if we want to say approved, yes or no, then we can just type whatever we want in there, and that allows us to track our internal hidden field information along with the submission as well. We'll go ahead and update that, and now we've got that PayPal transaction ID and our approved hidden field with the value of yes. Now this particular submission also had a file attached, so in order to view that file, we can look at the print option within this the response report, and then look at the file attachments area, which will have a link to whatever was attached. So in this case, it's an image, so it'll open in a browser. If it was a PDF file, you could download it and open it in Adobe Reader, whatever you wanted to look at. You can also right click on an image and save it to your local computer if that's what you need to do. So in addition to that, we'll have a look at the email confirmation that was sent out when somebody submitted the form. So in this case, we're looking at the copy that went back to the administrator, and it has a link to the confirmation page, but it also has a link to the file that was attached to the submission. So that's in the email as well, which is very handy if you are having a coaching application form going to the coaching selection committee and you're having them attach something like their coaching philosophy. The people that are on that email notification would be able to see that the actual attachment just by clicking on the link that's provided in the email. The other thing I'll point out is because we had a limit set on this form, if the submission is within 5 of that limit, then a notice will go to the administrator of the form warning them that this form now has 2 responses. A soft limit of 5 has been set on the form. So what that should trigger for you is if you've got a limit of like 25, once it gets close to the limit, just make sure that whatever the first 20 submissions are legitimate, so that way if the 25th person comes in or the 26th person comes in to submit their form, that their response would be considered valid if somebody else had maybe duplicated a submission or had not paid or something like that. So this is just to help administer those responses. Now the other thing we'll show off is that in the export option, so if you click export to CSV, that will then give us all of our data back in Excel again. So in here we have the file attachments. So this would give us a list of all of the files that have been attached. So within here we can copy that and then go back into our browser and paste that address, and again get a copy of that that file that was attached to the form. So the only other thing we'll quickly show off is the PayPal account creation process, and we won't go through the whole thing, but basically if you just go to paypal.com and then look in their website has a fairly obvious button for signing up, so click sign up. Then it'll ask if it's a personal or business account, so choose whatever option you'd like. In this case we'll choose a business account and hit continue. Then it's going to ask you what option you like to use. So PayPal Payment Standard, which has a no monthly fee, or PayPal Payments Pro, which is $35 per month. The option that we've integrated into your site does not require PayPal Payments Pro. You can use PayPal Payments Standard. This allows you to accept all the credit cards, debit cards, and PayPal on your site. We automatically create those PayPal buttons for you, and you can have email invoices for fast payment. The rates on both are the same, so it's 2.9% and 30 cents per transaction. If you happen to be a registered not-for-profit association, you can also apply for PayPal's not-for-profit status, and if you do, then they have better rates for those types of associations. So we hit get started, it'll ask for an email address, and then you continue on the rest of the account creation process. So we also recommend that you use an email address that's attached to your association, not to anybody personally. And we do include email with the website, so whatever your domain name is, if you wanted to create an email user called paypal@yourdomainname.com, we recommend using that so that it's attached to an email address that belongs to the association. Whatever email address you use in here is the one that you would use when you're setting up the form under the payment provider. That email address is what you would use when you create the account.